Brett, just give us your general message and observations after this case.
Well, as the Premier said, it's one case. We've identified it relatively early. We've got that exposure information coming in very rapidly. And I think people will absolutely step up to this in terms of knowing that they need to get tested and that they'll need to isolate until they get that negative result. If everyone's doing that, we'll absolutely get on top of it. This individual has given very detailed information about where he's been and when. That's all you need to get on top of transmission, to know where someone who's infectious or potentially infectious has been. Make sure you identify everyone who's been in those locations and wrap this public health response around them. So not just those primary close contacts, but also going to those secondary close contacts, as we did for the Black Rock cluster, which we turned around in a really short period of time.
Do you think it'll be safe for the test to go ahead?
I do. I think, we've identified this individual and the exposure sites that are of concern, but those other residents within the Grand Hyatt, they're casual contacts, they were in their rooms. Those individuals who'd been identified as positive were moved out to Medi Hotel. They were in the early part of the quarantine period there, really from the 15th of January to the 22nd. So no one who was a positive case was in the hotel after that date. So a lot of those tennis players and their entourage will really be coming up to 14 days, if not longer, before the Australian Open. So getting them tested now is a precautionary but useful measure, and then we'll have that 14-day period actually before the Open starts.
We technically eliminated the virus for a second time today. How devastating is it to hear about?
We'll do it again. We will do it again. Look, if we have to do it 10 times over, we can do it. We've got the tools, and really importantly, we've learned the tough lessons, and we've provided those tough lessons to the rest of Australia. We've learnt from our counterparts. Every time there's a challenge that one of our interstate counterparts faces, we learn from it, and vice versa. And I think Australia's in a good position. No one wants to have gone through the tragic circumstances that Victoria has, but you cannot have that occur and not embed those lessons to make sure that you're in the very best position going forward.
And you're expecting more cases?
Look, I think the testing of this individual indicates that he probably had a high viral load. That's what the test results show. So for his very close contacts, I think there is a risk that they'll potentially become cases. But that's why we're contacting them now. That's why they're isolating from this moment forward, and why their contacts will isolate as well, so that, if a case occurs, there won't be further transmission to others.
How many close contacts are in isolation already?
It's hard to know already. There's been a lot of phone calls made. They're ongoing now, and people tell their own close contacts. I think it'll be dozens already.
And just to confirm, so he developed symptoms and went for another test post that final day of work test?
That's right. So he had no symptoms at work, tested every day at work, as every worker goes through, which is also reassuring to us. No other worker has tested positive, including those who've gone on to different workplaces, because the Hyatt closed down as a quarantine site. So there were some individuals who've gone on to other settings, and if that's a quarantine setting, they've also tested every day, and they've also clearly tested negative every day. But he was tested on exit, developed symptoms a little bit after that, and has been tested and come back positive from a test from yesterday.
Are you confident that all of those protocols around the system are still right, or does there need to be something revisited to maybe check in with workers post that last day?
Yeah, look, we revisit everything every single time, and obviously when something like this comes up, we'll dig down to the specific circumstances that might have been at play here. Look, I think testing after leaving quarantine had already been flagged. We'd introduced a paper from Victoria for AHPPC, all Chief Health Officers, to consider about testing when you've finished, and that might be just before leave, just before your job finishes up, or you're going on holiday. So it's not always easy to do testing after that period of time, but we have to look at that like we do everything else.
Sorry, can I just clarify, just on masks, we've had a few comments coming through right now. Kids over 12, they don't need to wear masks at school tomorrow, or do they?
So it'll be exactly the same settings as for the Black Rock period.
Thanks.
Are you happy with the time frame between detection of the virus and where we are today? We're clamping down on stuff pretty quickly now.
Oh, absolutely. Obviously, this is a test that's come through in the afternoon. We've already ramped up every aspect of the response that we know needs to be in place to get ahead of it. The rest of it is for each and every Victorian to take on those messages, do the testing that we know will identify anything if it's out there.
Can I just, before we finish up, can I just indicate that I've